If you're anything like me and you're someone who has 100% in the tank for certain things at certain times and then 0 when they do well, this is going to be a great video for you, because it's going to talk through the 5 main mindset swaps that I've made throughout my injuries and journeys that I think will be really helpful to share. And I speak to my clients all the time about, I wanted to make a video that might help a younger me, because I remember when I was in my late teens and I struggled with depression a huge amount. I spent a huge amount of time YouTubing these things. I would YouTube motivational videos. I would YouTube how to overcome certain things. And so I guess the main reason I'm making this video is for a younger me. I'm making this video because it's something that I could have done when I was really struggling with depression, my ADHD, which in fairness, I only got diagnosed with last year, but it's obviously something I've always struggled with. And the depression that I've got as a result of that is very much a part of the journey and has very much been a part of the struggle. So the 5 main mindset swaps that I would say I've either made, or the mindsets that I've had, which I've encouraged other people to make, are essential not just for your physique-based journey, but they're essential for life as well. And they will make you live a happier, more fulfilling life. And they'll also make you more comfortable and confident in yourself, because you'll feel a lot more in control. So the first rule, I would say, if you could call them that, is never why me. I never remember having an attitude or a mindset that was why me, and it's always been the fact that I've blamed myself. When I was 8 years old, I went shooting with my dad. So we grew up on a farm, and we used to, go target practicing and things like that. And I remember trying to look through the gun with my left eye, and my dad, obviously being very, very gun conscious, and us being quite young, teaching us the values of safety and things like that, was fuming because he thought I was messing about. And I was looking through the gun with my left eye and trying to shoot with my right hand. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I can't see anything." He said, "What do you mean you can't see anything?" I said, "I can't see anything out of this eye." And to be honest, I just thought we all have a good arm and a bad arm, a good leg and a bad leg. Why would I not have a good eye and a bad eye? Never thought anything of it. Anyway, long or the short of it, we went to the opticians that week, and I am pretty much blind in that eye. I had to wear an eye patch for 6 months, so I walked around like a fucking pirate for my primary school life. And my mum, bless her, took the time to come into school and kind of help me, because I obviously kept walking into stuff. And I blamed myself. I thought that the reason that this had happened is because when I was 4, it was the solar eclipse. And they said, don't lift your glasses up if you're going to look at the sun. Make sure you keep them on your eyes all the time. And I remember looking, and I blamed myself for that my entire life. And like when I told my parents about this, they were obviously, and this was only a couple of years ago, when I told my parents about this, they were like, "What? Why didn't you say anything?" I was like, "Because I just thought it was my fault. Just felt like I did what I wasn't supposed to do, so I got the result." And that's been the story of my life, in the sense that I've always taken responsibility, or blame, if you like, for things that were or were not my fault. Now, with this, why me? I can't remember where this came from, and I'm not going to take credit for it, because I remember listening to this part, but somebody said something that really stuck with me, and it was in a YouTube video, and it was, if it's not you, who would you rather it was? Who would you rather it was that went through this pain? Who is it rather it was that had to go and have knee surgery? If you were talking about injuries with your process, it is you. It is you that's going through it. So you might as well accept that and move forwards rather than stay in the past. A really fantastic book, which I encourage you to read or go and look at, an audio book, whatever it is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, because he actually embodies this through his book really very well. It's not about self-pity. It's not about moping. It's not about being defeated. It's about taking responsibility and saying, okay, this is happening to me. This is now, and I need to do something about it. But first we have to have acceptance, because without acceptance of the situation that we're in, we can't go to the next phases. We can't get self-control. We can't get the ability to be in control of a scenario we can't yet accept is happening to us. Okay? So being solution focused is fantastic, but you can't get to the solution focused area, the next phase, until we can accept that solution is what's happening. And this takes me really nicely onto my second point, and I've alluded to this slightly already, about taking responsibility. If we take responsibility for something, we are also taking control of that something. If we put responsibility out into the world, for example, I am the least superstitious person in the world. I couldn't give a fuck about superstition, okay? Because all superstition is doing is putting responsibility and control onto something you can't have anything to do with. It's a bit like luck, but worse, because people say, oh, superstitious to do that, don't do that, don't do that. All of these things are just putting control in the hands of other people, or things that do or don't exist, but we're not going to get down that today. With responsibility, if you take responsibility for everything that you can, you are also saying, I'm choosing to take control of everything that I can. And I believe it was in Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, where he talks about one of the founding godfathers of American psychology, who, I won't ruin it, go read the book, it's fantastic, or get the audiobook. He talks about how he basically had this life set up for him by his dad, and then he goes to the South American jungle, and then decides that for a whole year he's going to take responsibility for everything. So this was one of the moments where, again, for me, I was like, wow, that's exactly how I felt. Like, that's something that I've done. For example, my eye. At the age of 8, I was taking responsibility for the fact that I was blind in my right eye, and that was my fault, even though obviously it was not. Well, it might have been, I don't know. What's important with taking responsibility is we don't take responsibility for things that actually matter more often than not. So people I talk to a lot say, oh, I take blame for everything. I blame myself for everything. I'm really harsh to myself. Taking responsibility is not about being harsh to ourselves. It's about acknowledging unemotionally what we could do better and what we didn't do so well. Taking responsibility is when somebody says, hey, you really hurt my feelings there. It's not about being like, well, they're your feelings, I can't change that. It's about looking at the scenario and thinking, could I have handled that better? And believe me, in my coaching career, I've handled many situations badly, and I've said things to clients and to friends and family and general life where I've turned around and gone, actually, do you know what? I got that wrong. I got that wrong. I should have dealt with that differently. With a different view now, I can see this, and this. This is what I would have said differently, and I'm sorry for that. And that's me taking responsibility, because more often than not, people don't take responsibility because they don't have the self-confidence to say that they're wrong. They have a too big an ego to admit that they're wrong, or because in the moment they think, well, that's how I felt then, so that's it. But what if we reflect? What if we look over it and say, actually, I would do things a little bit differently, and I would change that mentality, or I would change that opinion. And if I'm honest, I think that's one of the things that makes me a good coach. It makes me a good coach because I'm able to stand above the things that I've said, look down and go, yeah, that probably wasn't the best way of dealing with that. I probably could have been more supportive and less cutthroat with that comment, or vice versa. I could have been more pushy. I could have given you a bit more oomph, but I didn't because of this. And I think too many people are too emotional, which leads them away from being able to take responsibility because they either don't want to hurt someone else's feelings or they're too insecure with their own. The third thing is something I have 100% had to work at, and by no means something I was born with or a mentality that I've had my whole life. I have an unequivocal level of self-confidence when it comes to sport. Okay, I have a really high level of confidence that if somebody shows me a new sport, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to be quite good at it. Why is that? It is not because I'm arrogant, which people have called me my entire life. I do not believe in any way, shape or form that I am an arrogant individual. I just have a lot of data that tells me I will be good at something. Right? I have picked up a lot of sports a lot of times and got very good at them. I played international rugby. Before I got my shoulder reconstructed, for example, I was trialing up a year to go and do that. So I was in the year below trying to get on the international pathway a year early. I've played national level hockey. I got trials for county cricket. These are data points. The thing is that people don't have a word yet for people who constantly put themselves down, and that's the opposite of arrogant, because we are so more accepting in this world of people who stand there and go, oh, I'm fucking shit at this. Oh, I'm shit at this. Oh, I'm shit at this. If that was the opposite of arrogant, that's what everybody is. And so as soon as somebody sits outside of that, automatically that individual is arrogant. And this is something that I grew up with. I grew up with people calling me arrogant for things. And I have had a lot of therapy about this. It's something that's a real soft spot for me, because either deep down inside, not anymore, by the way, it's not a soft spot for me anymore. I've worked through this really well, but I think that it's something which I took very personally because I couldn't understand why. I was like, but that's not arrogance. That's just me enjoying myself. You know, I like doing this. I like trying new things out in sports and things like that. But it would take me another video to explain some of the reasons. But for example, when I was younger, this was something that really did hit me. When I was younger and we used to play rugby, I would get put on a ban of scoring tries. So basically, if I scored any more, I'd get taken off. So from a very young age, I was told that basically to be good was to be bad. And I had to then try and find ways to help other people get tries that I couldn't get because I didn't want to get taken off the pitch. So people started calling me arrogant because they didn't realise that basically my coach had said to me, if you score again, I'll take you off. So automatically I get to the try line and then I wait there to give someone else the ball. So this is kind of where it starts. I wasn't going to share that, but hey, it's in there now. Self-doubt and fear of failure are things that have threaded their way through every other aspect of my life, and sport has been like my island. Sport has been the island for me to calm, chill and relax on, because everywhere else feels like shark-infested waters. My education, my social life, my relationships, these have all been areas for me which have been shark-infested waters, and it's not been easy. I have struggled massively with fear of failure in my business. I've feared it with my relationships. I feared it with my finances. You name it, I've struggled with it. And it's something I've had a lot of therapy for because, quite frankly, I couldn't figure it out for myself and it was ruining my life. So here are the lessons that I've learned, and the two things I want to share with you above all. The first one is the Work by Byron Katie. I accidentally got this audiobook because I thought it was something different, and I started listening to it, and it's quite religious because it's a lot about her like enlightening and things like that, but there is a lot of good shit in there and it's a phenomenal book. I can't, if I'd have known what it was about, I'd never have got it. So I'm glad I did, because in there's a thing called The Work, and The Work is basically 4 questions. Is it true? You can only answer that in the definitive. Yes or no. So if you thought to yourself, oh my God, I look like shit, I'm fat, and I've got no muscle. Is that true? Do you have absolute proof that's true? No, you probably don't, because you probably are in quite good shape. No, it's not true. Okay, so what has given me that thought process? Where has that thought process come from? And then you start to go down that line. And there's different ways you can do the work. I mean, if you follow the work itself, and I'll get the 4 questions and stick them up on the screen here, because I can never quite remember them, because what I end up doing for my clients is editing them. So it always starts with that. But one I gave my client recently was, how do you know? How do you know? So the first question is it true? How do I know it's true is the second question. So what data have you got that shows you that it's true? The next question then, it depends, but the next question I gave this client was, how does it make me feel when I believe that this is true? And the 4th question is, how would I feel if this wasn't actually true? Where would I be if this thought never entered my mind? And all of a sudden you start to remove yourself from a situation you've got so wrapped up in, and you start to place yourself in a situation where you've taken control, you've taken responsibility, and you're in a much better place. The next thing I've learned along the way is, what if the opposite were true? And you can do this on the fly. So if you're out in town and you feel self-conscious, or you feel anxious about something, or you're just, something's gone wrong, and you know, oh my God, I've just got injured, I'm gonna be out for absolutely months. What if the opposite were true? What if I'm out for 2 weeks? Am I just being really anxious and upset for no reason because I'm allowing that emotion to take control of me, when actually I could decide that the opposite could be true and I have no data otherwise? So there's 2 things there which I think are really helpful to manage that overwhelm, to manage that self-doubt, that kind of fear of failure as well. Because fear of failure can be, a fear of failure in the sense that we fear starting and not being able to achieve that stuff. But there are many ways that we can address fear of failure, and I will make a different video on that one, because that's a big one in and of itself. Now, I'm going to be very, very clear. I don't agree with 99% of the stuff this man is coming out with at the moment. And when I was listening to him kind of 10 years ago, some of the things he said really changed my life for the positive. But you have to be really difficult. You have to be really clever nowadays with not getting cancelled for giving people a shout out, and the things they say are obviously extreme. But I will say this, because it did help me. I read 12 Rules for Life. and 12 Rules for Life was a really, really good book for me at the time. Personally, I don't enjoy the religious aspects of it, and I think for different reasons, there are the reasons why I don't, but I think it was his 8th rule. And the 8th rule for life is treat yourself like somebody that you are responsible for. Because in that rule, he talks about how we often put our pets first. We often put our children first. We often put our friends first. If your pet was ill, you take them straight to the vet. If your son or daughter was ill, you take them straight to the doctor. You would fight tooth and nail for that person or that animal, but we don't do the same for ourselves. So treat yourself like someone you are responsible for. If you were responsible for said person, you, how would you feel? What would you do? How would it change things for you if you had that level of responsibility? It's a big question. And it changes a lot, because when you see that for you, we are responsible for ourselves, we start doing things that make a bigger difference. We start doing the morning routine that makes us feel better. We start eating better. We start moving better. We start doing the things that proactively take care of ourselves. And the best analogy for this comes from an aeroplane. When the air mask drops down, put yours on first before you do anyone else's. Because if we cannot help ourselves, we're no good to anybody else. So my 4th thing is treat yourself like someone you're responsible for. I would say this is something that personally I have been very, very good at over the years, because I found that for me, it's a part of the responsibility taking. I've always been very responsible in the sense of I feel responsible for myself. But certainly when you realize that no one's going to help you, no one's there to save you, you have to do it, you become more responsible for yourself. But more importantly, people can't make you do it. No matter how much they love you, they can't make you go to therapy, they can't make you go and train, they can't make you eat well. You have to do it for yourself. And fundamentally, if we can't do it for ourselves, why would somebody else do it for us? It's not their responsibility, it's ours. So treat yourself like somebody that you are responsible for. And if you're not sure yet how that looks, consider areas where if you were somebody else looking in on your life as a third party, what would you do differently? What would you, if you looked at yourself from the outside, where would you say actually you could do a bit better there? Maybe it's getting some more daylight hours in the sun. Maybe it's going out for a walk. Maybe it's the way we treat ourselves with the food that we eat, things like that. And if we do that, just perhaps we start to take better responsibility for ourselves. The next one is something which saved me in a very, 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 very difficult part of my life. I have these phases of really deep depression, like unsavable levels of deep depression. And I remember being in one once where I just couldn't kick it. This was back in 2018, pre-COVID. Remember very clearly because I had a whiteboard on my desk at the time. And I was started listening to David Goggins' book. Now, I am too logical to see a lot of what David Goggins does and be like, I'm going to be like that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be like him. Because a lot of the time I think, that's just fucking mental. Why would anybody want to do that? And quite frankly, it's dangerous and it's not respectful to the body or mind to do those things, okay? Like there are levels to this game. So if you're thinking of following that, do remember that there are levels to this. And also there are some people who do things beyond healthy. They do things beyond that which is sensible. They do things that are not going to be very good for their body. And that's where we need to find a way to draw a line. In David Goggins' book, he talks about a cookie jar. And the cookie jar is where we take everything that we've achieved, everything we've overcome, everything we've done, everything you've won or succeeded in, anything. You write it all down and you put it all in the jar, the cookie jar. And I did this differently because I'm a very visual person. And I also really struggle with object permanence. So if something's not in my eye line, I don't see it. For example, my wife will ask me to hoover things and I just won't remember to do it. And so often she just leaves the hoover in my door and I will leave it there until I remember to do it, because if I see it, I'll know I need to do it. So what I did is I took my whiteboard and I wrote down everything I'd done, everything I'd achieved, everything I'd overcome. And for me, the overcome thing was probably a much bigger part than what I'd achieved. But I remember writing it all down and just bursting out crying, to be honest. It was a complete emotional breakdown. Because when I did that, what I realized in that moment was that I'd overcome so much at such a young age. And I'd done all of these things which I'd never really sat down and appreciated. I've never really sat there and been like, well done. You made it through school. Well done. You made it through university. Well done. You overcame these troubles and etc. I won't go through them. But when I did that, it was the first time in my life I'd ever really sat down and appreciated stuff that I'd done. Because like I said at the very beginning of this video, I've never been someone who's been very good at seeing achievement, and I've never been good at achieving it and celebrating it, because for me achievement usually means the end, and that's where things start getting difficult for me. So if anything, sometimes I avoid achievement because I don't want the end to happen and I don't want to hate something. So it's been a really difficult relationship that I've had there, but this was a game changer for me. You know, all the things I overcame in terms of my education and getting through that, and my knee operations. I went on then to have 2 more. With my shoulder reconstruction, like, you name it, right? And it was the first time I'd ever really done that and been like, wow, well done. So the cookie jar is a really effective way to try and reinvigorate yourself when you keep messing things up, or you keep struggling, or you keep feeling down, or maybe right now you feel depressed. Get a piece of paper, get a whiteboard, whatever it is, write everything down. Fucking fill that thing. Get 2 pieces of paper if you have to. But it can be the simplest thing. It could be the person you helped. It could be the names of people you've supported. It could be anything. Do it. Because then you've got this undeniable piece of data where you know that you've achieved these things, and that will help build self-esteem, build self-confidence, and make you realize that even in your darkest moments and in your most depressed times, or the times you're struggling with injuries and illnesses and things like that, you'll still overcome stuff and you'll still be able to do a great job with it. This is a bit of a bonus, I guess, because I said I would do 5 and I've done my 5. But the thing that I think I am most grateful for is that I have an unwavering level of self-belief that I will overcome something. And it's because of all of the things I've already overcame. So the cookie jar effect is one thing, and having that as a tangible source of, I guess almost actually a library would be a better term. It's a library of books, but the books are things you've overcome, and they represent chapters of your life or moments of your life. The unwavering self-belief part comes because when you analyze all of those things, what you start to see is that if you can overcome all of them, and if you overcame the first thing when you didn't have what you had when you did the third thing, you overcame the third thing when you didn't have what you had in the 10th thing, all of a sudden what we realize is that we have a huge skill set, a huge toolbox, and it's just up to us now to start utilizing that. It's up to us to start using that toolbox. It's up to us to start putting things into practice that would really help you to overcome the challenge that you're currently facing. And sometimes it's about what we're going to do in the future, but sometimes it's about what we can do today. Sometimes it's about what we can do in this very moment. And when we start to look at time frames in different ways, we start to perceive things differently, and we start to see that actually I just need to get through today. Tomorrow's another day. I'll wake up, we'll reset, we'll try again. The day after that's another day. Next hour's another hour. After work is be different. You know, we have to keep fighting for those changes. We have to keep fighting for those moments that are going to be different, because if we don't, we get caught up in what has been. We get caught up in what's happened in the past. And the difference between then the depression and anxiety is that anxiety is the fear of the future and the unknowns that are going to happen because you can't control them. And depression is the sadness of things that have happened in the past and the uncontrollable nature that that has. So if we can learn to live more in the present by utilizing the tools that we've had, perhaps what we'll end up doing is having not just much better physiques, better bodies, but we'll have bulletproof minds. We'll have more self-confidence. We'll have more self-worth. We will live happier because we know that when challenges occur, we will face them head on, and we will know exactly what to do when they arrive. I think that's the biggest message here. I think if I were to wrap all of this up and hand it back to my 18-year-old self who, quite frankly, didn't know how to get help or what to do. And I had a lot of tools at that age, none of which are the stories for me to tell because these are to do with my family and things like that. But, you know, growing up, I had to face a lot of challenges, shall we say. So I knew how to problem solve. I knew all of this stuff. And then I think if that 18-year-old was still as lost as he was, and is still as depressed and still as challenged and still as hopeless, if I could wrap all of this up and give it back to him and say one thing, I would say keep learning from the challenges, because these challenges are just lessons. And when you see them as lessons, or you see them as a game, I write a lot in my emails to people, like on my email list, and I write a lot to my clients. And if you're one of my clients, you'll probably have received a message like this off me before. And at the end, I write game on. Because when we perceive something as a game, the whole idea of a game is to learn the rules and then manage yourself throughout the period of time that game lasts so that we get the result that we want. That's what a game is. So when I say game on, what I really mean is let's go get stuck in and see what we can do. Because getting stuck in, seeing what you can do, learning from mistakes, making mistakes, learning again, making mistakes, like that's life. That's all life is. Most importantly, what I think is the best thing I'd want to show that 17 or 18-year-old me is that we're still going. We're still here. And if you yourself are really struggling at the moment, and whether it's to do with fitness and health or mental health or anything like that, I hope that that in itself is some kind of help, because this isn't the place or the time to talk about the deepness of and the depth of those struggles, but I do understand, and there is always light at the end of the tunnel. The thing that I've spoken a little bit about, and I'm going to wrap up with right now, is two things. Firstly, the mind is an incredible thing, and it's very, very malleable. We can change a lot of the thought processes we have. We just have to be willing to do so, and willing to put in the work, willing to face the pain, willing to take responsibility, and willing to learn the rest of the way. Because although we can learn all of those things, then you've got to deal with the thing itself, right? It's not just learn the mindset tricks and then fucking life's amazing. You then have to use them. It's one thing having an arsenal, it's another thing bringing it out, right? So it's important that we understand that, as Tony Robbins says, knowledge is only potential power. We cannot just rely on knowledge as a thing that we'll then go and implement, because that's just not how life works. We need to not only have knowledge, but then we need to use it. We need to make the power. We need to utilize it for what it is. And the final thing I would say is we just have to get up one more time. That's like my mantra from last year. Just get up one more time. Doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. If you just tell yourself, it's just one more time. It's just one more time I need to get back up. Things do get better. Things will improve. And so will you. And so will your life. My friends, it's been a pleasure. I really hope this has helped. I will speak to you soon. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe, because a lot of my channel isn't just going to be about fitness and health. It's going to be about the mindset battles. It's going to be about the changes that we make, and it's going to be about how we can make your life, your physique, your energy and your strength the best that it's ever been. It's been a pleasure. Much love. Take care. Bye for now.